Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. The government will bring in the new national tourism policy before the budget session of Parliament. Union Tourism and Culture Minister Kishan Reddy made the announcement on Sunday while addressing the National Conference of State Tourism Ministers. He said after vast consultations and deliberations with all stakeholders, the policy is now at the concluding stage and will soon be placed before the Union Cabinet. The policy aims to bring about some much-needed reforms in the tourism and hospitality sector, which is one of the largest service industries in India. As per data cited by the tourism minister himself, the tourism sector in India generated about 16.91 lakh crore rupees, or about 9.2% of India's GDP in the year 2018, and it has supported around 42 million jobs, or 8% of the total employment in the country as well. For India to achieve the goal of becoming a $5 trillion economy, as well as a developed nation in the next 25 years by 2047, the tourism sector holds a huge role and potential, to harness which the tourism policy has laid down various objectives. In Perspective today, we'll look at the key features and significant objectives of the National Tourism Policy with an eminent panel of experts who are joining us virtually. Pleased to welcome Mr. Vinod Zutshi, former Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, Mr. Subhash Goel, President, Confederation of Tourism Professionals, and Mr. Ashish Gupta, Consulting CEO, Federation of Associations in Indian Tourism and Hospitality. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program today on Sansad TV. Mr. Zutshi, let me in fact begin the program today with you. Help us and our viewers understand what does the draft tourism policy entail, some of the key highlights, if you could take us through.
So at the outset, I would like to, it's a matter of great happiness and a welcome news coming from the Honorable Minister that the new tourism policy would be released maybe within the next 2 months. In fact, I would say that, the current policy is way back of 2002, and the world has changed. In fact, the tourism has undergone a very big transformation. It has become a key driver of economic growth. Digitalization has made the traveler independent and so many things. So I would say that I had an opportunity to have a look at the draft policy, which is the version November 21. Mm-hmm. And I must say that it is very realistic, very futuristic, very innovative, forward-looking, and I would say inclusive and sustainable and responsible tourism, incidentally, has been made as the overarching principles of the draft policy. Now, some of the key features which are going to be game changer for the Indian tourism sector, to my mind, is that in the draft policy, the ministry has proposed 5 tourism missions. And these tourism missions have primarily been evolved looking at the fact that there are requirements in this particular sector. Now, first is the mission on green tourism. The other is mission on digital technology and digital tourism. One is on the skill development, and another is a very unique feature in the policy, which I think the industry would also appreciate, is that there is a mission on destination management companies. Now, this DMO concept is a totally new concept, and I must say that this is going to be one of the most, I would say, biggest highlights of this new policy. And the fifth is on the skill. The fifth mission is on the national mission on tourism MSMEs. Now, MSMEs, incidentally, as we all know, most of the tourism business is in the unorganized sector, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises, they are making a big base of the tourism industry. Now, supporting the MSMEs through a mission is again a laudable initiative. 2 more things which I would like to mention here in the initial, comments is that it is not just the policy direction which has been mentioned in this policy. They have also come out with certain action points, like, for instance, the The policy says that there will be a national tourism authority and there will be a national tourism board. Now, these two organizations would be the executive, especially the National Tourism Authority is likely to be the executive wing, which is going to implement the policy. So it is not just that only direction has been given, there are action points also. Another thing which is very important is there has always been a need, which was felt in the tourism sector, that there is lack of coordination at the center, at the state level, at the private sector industry, at the academia, at the civil society, at the public level, and the local population. Now, in this particular policy, they have ensured that there will be institutional linkages between the center, the Ministry of Tourism, with the state governments, with the industry associations, with private sector industry, and with academia and all. Now, there will be a better cohesion, there will be better coordination among all the players, because tourism is not just a sector which is played by the government alone. Government basically is a facilitator. Tourism is a privately driven sector, and that is why this coordination is going to be
certainly
important.
So going forward,
initially I would like to stop here. I will come back on some other point related to policy, and maybe certain things which can be further considered.
Absolutely. We'll come back to you and discuss the way forward in terms of implementation, as you said. Mr. Goyal, coming to you, so the draft policy does not just entail the key guiding principles. It lays down a framework on how, it can be implemented effectively with obviously due coordination, because it's a complex, approach. Now, coming to one of the significant features that Mr. Jutshi highlighted is about, the destination management approach. How do you look at this becoming a game changer? Is it a radical change that the new policy brings about to the tourism sector? And what kind of positive impact is it going to have? How do you look at it?
No, it's definitely going to have a positive impact, because a lot of places, tourism offices have been closed or they have not been expanded, and the embassies have been, the commercial department of embassies are being given a more important role in tourism promotion. I have always said that one is, what is our objective? We know the Prime Minister's objective is to get a 5 trillion economy, become a 5 trillion economy in the next 4-5 years. But what is the objective of this policy, and how are we going to achieve that objective? And is it time bound? Are we going to, since Mr. Jutshi talked about coordination, and all the points he mentioned about, being environment friendly, talking about SMSE, and all those points we really appreciate. But one point I have always said, that any tourism policy should be integrated with the civil aviation, commerce, home and external affairs. I think these ministries are very crucial for a proper tourism policy in order to achieve the objective of the Prime Minister of $5 trillion economy. Now, if visas are not there, which the Home Ministry is responsible for, we cannot have that growth in tourism. Secondly, we need to sensitize the Commerce Ministry on the various incentives that were given to foreign exchange earning. Those should be continued and increased. Now, if these things are done, then I think it's a very good policy. And I'm very happy that in Dharamshala, all the trade associations are also there, all the tourism ministers are there, and their feedback is being taken. This is a very good welcome step, and I congratulate the tourism minister for taking this initiative. And my only request is that please integrate the civil aviation policy of the country mainly, and the Ministry of Commerce incentives on foreign exchange earnings, and the vision of the external affairs. I think if all these things are integrated, then there is no reason why we will not exceed the 2019 figures of $30 billion foreign exchange earning. But we will also play a very important role in, the making India the $5 trillion economy which is the vision of our beloved Prime Minister. So I think this is my reaction to it, and I'll again come back when I hear others.
Let me go across to Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, what's your view? Because the fact that tourism holds huge potential, we are now the 5th largest economy. But if we look at the number of tourists who are coming to India, it's quite minimal. Only about 2% of the world's tourists are coming to see India. So in terms of addressing those shortcomings, what kind of a game changer will this new tourism policy be? And what kind of focus has been given to connectivity? Because that point that Mr. Goyal raised, there has to be synergy between transport and tourism.
Namaste, good evening. First, thank you very much for holding the show on a very important topic. And I apologize in advance if there is a reception issue because I'm outside the country right now. I think the point that you made, the game has already changed. And today at Dharamshala, we shared in our presentation where faith and all faith associations, all the trade associations represent, that India in 2019 had almost 11 million foreign tourists and 17 million international travelers and 2.3 billion domestic tourism visits. This has the potential till 2047 to go up, and we believe our vision is to take it up to 100 million inbound tourists and almost 10 billion domestic tourism visits. So as you rightly said at the beginning of the show, that there was almost a 4.7 crore population employed in tourism. We believe that almost 10 to 15 crore more people across the country, directly and indirectly, can be employed. And the new tourism policy is exactly the right step in taking that forward. Now, the key thing is participation and involvement. And we are very, very happy that the ministry all along has been in dialogue with the stakeholders, with us, in evolving the policy. And the right thing to do is, as was rightly mentioned, the first part is sustainability. It's very critical. It's the key differentiator that the policy covers it. The second is the green and digital, which is the new era. The third is focus on MSMEs. India is a land of MSMEs. The fourth key aspect is destination development. We are a country of a million and a billion destinations, and the focus on each of these destinations is what the policy covers, and that will be the biggest game changer. The key aspect is the participation of the industry, the participation of the states, and participation of all the central government departments, which the policy endures to touch upon. And we look forward to each of these aspects being covered to ensure that all our tourism enterprises in travel, hospitality, have a part in not just we have had a part in planning it, now it's a part to implement this policy, along with other central government departments, along with the state government departments, and along with the industry. So it's very, very heartening that the Ministry of Tourism has taken this very, very bold step and a long pending step to implement this policy. And we look forward to great results. Tourism is going to be the biggest game changer for India, and it's going to take India right up front in the top 5 destinations globally.
Certainly. Mr. Goyal, since a lot of onus is now on the industry, one of the guiding principles of the policy says it has to be a private sector-led growth with the public sector acting as an enabler. Now, of course, the draft policy has been shared with all stakeholders. What are the kind of suggestions that the industry has made to, ensure that all of these principles are implemented effectively and the kind of growth and potential that we want the tourism sector to achieve that happens at a rapid pace?
You see, I agree with all the other points that it's a very good practical policy. But, if we talk about 100 million tourists, that cannot be achieved unless and until we open the skies. As it is today, the airfares are skyrocketing. An airfare in 2019 to USA or Canada, which was about 70,000 rupees, is a return airfare in economy is coming to more than 2 lakhs. So it is very expensive for foreign tourists to come to India, and it's very expensive for Indian tourists to go abroad. And with the result, we are not seeing the same amount. You see, it was a very good opportunity for India because Eastern Europe, there is war going on. In China, there is a problem. And so in India, this was the right time to attract tourists from all over the world. But one, our marketing campaign has been delayed. So in any policy, it is very important, timely action or action without delay is very, very important if we want to reap the fruits. And now you see these end of September or middle of September, the outbound tourists from Europe start. And from Scandinavia, October onwards, they start because it's very cold there. So we need to immediately open the skies, and we immediately need to, have an aggressive digital marketing, social media marketing, and we have a big budget now, but we can't delay. It is now or never. If we don't, cash on the present season, the tour operators who were suffering in the last 2.5 years, and a lot of people went bankrupt, and a lot of millions of jobs were lost. Unless and until we immediately take action without delay is the need of the hour.
That's a very important aspect. That's a very important aspect, Mr. Goyal, that you've raised. And that is something that the Prime Minister also keeps reiterating, Mr. Zuchi, that we are in a phase of transition wherein not just the right policies matter, timely action will matter the most. So when these shortcomings are coming to surface, tourism has been hugely impacted by COVID. Now that it's reviving and these are challenges that we are facing, how do we aim to address them? What is the kind of thrust that is being given to challenges like these that Mr. Goyal has raised?
So yes, let me just mention about the connectivity part, because that was the core subject of his discussion. Now let me also say that India has a very open sky policy, and it's just a matter of post-COVID effect that the visas of other countries are not available. India today, as we all know, we have e-visa regime with more than 156 countries. Now, any country with e-visa can come to India. Now, that is one. You would also recall that even in the worst of circumstances, when we had COVID and Omicron, India continued with bubble arrangement with at least 24 countries. Now, this is something which is very unique and speaks volumes about the commitment of increasing and improving the connectivity. Now, this post-COVID effect will gradually die down. The rates and fares is just a local, a temporary matter. What is important is whether the policy, now coming to the civil aviation policy, as has been mentioned, the policy of tourism, the current draft policy also makes a mention about the infrastructure, core infrastructure development, which has been happening in various other ministries. Now, even I would recall the budget, the last budget announcement in which PM Gati Shakti has been launched, and it speaks about all the 5 important connectivity modes, multimodal connectivity. It concentrates on developing railway system, developing inland water tourism. Then it talks about air connectivity, talks about roads. Now, all these things are going to help tourism sector. More than that, the ministry has come out with Swadesh Darshan and Prashad, a new version of these 2 flagship schemes. And with a huge budget of 2,400 crores given in the last budget, I'm sure all these infrastructure things will take care. Now, more important is the policy also mentions, as far as developing infrastructure is concerned, it mentions, number 1, that they will promote investments. There is an FDI, 100% FDI in tourism. Number 2, it also mentions that policy mentions that we will try to get infrastructure status to the hotels. It also mentions about industry status to be given and will request the state governments to provide industry status to the tourism units. It also talks about public-private partnerships, and it also talks about viability gap funding by which more and more investments can come. Now, these infrastructure, making India as a infrastructure hub for tourism is definitely the need of the hour, but the government through these ministries is also working, And simultaneously, tourism ministry has come out with those specific schemes which is going to improve the tourism infrastructure. Coming to the point which Goel Saab had mentioned, that the tourism other ministries are not involved. So if you go through the draft policy, you will find that the policy mentions each and every ministry and what are the role which Ministry of Tourism will have with these ministries separately on each and every account. Now, it is a clear-cut mention in a tabular form, now which shows that there will be a much better coordination with all the other ministries, because ultimately tourism doesn't have any product of its own.
Absolutely.
We are
I think
dependent on
you're right.
Ministry of Culture
There
for
are
the ASI
roles that
money.
are demarcated, but going forth, what's important is that for effective implementation, there has to be synergy. Okay, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Goel, I'll come back to you. Let me get in Mr. Gupta's perspective. Multimodal connectivity is something that, of course, is being talked about a lot. So when the Prime Minister unveiled the National Logistics Policy, that was one of the thrust areas. When we talk about the National Tourism Policy, again, multimodal connectivity, multimodal transport is something that we have to now focus on. Road, rail, air connectivity is something that has seen, growth, tremendous growth over the last few years. But when it comes to water tourism, this is one area where India has to work upon. Where do we stand in terms of, promoting water tourism compared to countries like the US, like China, where tourism is, doing quite well? And in terms of realizing the full potential, what more needs to be done? Because this is one area which largely remains untapped.
All right, let me take the second part of what you said just now, and let me take a more philosophical approach to it. The policy is there now. The policy will get announced in some time. There are three key things which are very important. The first one is participation, as the policy lays down, and participation letter is there. Participation in spirit must be carried very diligently between the industry, state, and the other central government ministries. Second is very diligent milestones on a monthly basis for each state, for each segment of tourism, and as you rightly said, for each form of multimodal aspect which will grow tourism. The third key aspect, and which is very, very critical as we stand here today, this was the worst phase for the Indian tourism, travel, and hospitality, both for entrepreneurs and for employees. Over 100 years, this has never happened. Businesses and employees are just starting to get out. So while we are looking at the policy, there has to be, and that is very critical, a transition roadmap towards getting everyone out from that slum in terms of their job stability, in terms of their revival, and in terms of immediate support as we move towards a policy. Now, having said that, you raise a very important point of rail, road, air, and water. Now, water, there are two aspects. One is the coastal tourism, which is the international. Second is domestic coastal tourism. Third is the waterways. And it's very nice that you have Mr. Gucci. In fact, we launched along with him the National Cruise Task Force, and which covered all of these aspects. There is a absolutely huge potential. I think if I remember the figures correctly, there's almost $700 billion of market size in the coastal tourism, which can be metro cruises and inland waterways. India is a country blessed naturally, hugely, and we have a huge potential in river waterways. But again, as you rightly said, there are many steps to achieving that goal between the center and the state and industry. The river waterways, the the domestic coastal circuit, the cruise tourism circuit, and the cruise tourism circuit of international ships. It is estimated more than 700 ships pass by the country, and we as a country we had been engaging very strongly. We have a potential to be the home port for most of the cruises today, provided our taxation policy, customs, immigration, obviously visa policy is already in line, the marketing policy, the local state policies, and the local infrastructure policies all get synergized together. And we come back then to the moot question: are all the departments working together, and is there a transition roadmap to the policy? So yes, as you rightly asked, waterways, India has a huge potential, and in all three aspects of waterways.
Absolutely. So, lots of these aspects that have been spoken about. Connectivity, of course, remains the most important aspect, Mr. Goel, as you rightly said. And seamless infrastructure, seamless connectivity is something that is most essential to enhance tourist experience when they come here to India. So that we've spoken a lot about connectivity. Now, let's talk about the other aspect of skill development, of, attracting investment. So each of these reforms are aimed at attracting investments. Now, all of these changes indicate the fact that we are on the right track. We've made some progress. It lays the roadmap for further progress to realize the full potential in the next 25 years, but not without adequate investment. So in terms of getting investment domestically, in terms of attracting international investors, how convinced are you that we are on the right track and progressing well, Mr. Goel?
Well, as far as human resource development is concerned, I think we have a lot of universities. In most of the universities, there is hotel management and tourism programs. And the government is also, very actively involved. Ministry of Tourism has a lot of institutes spread all over the country. So, and the skill development ministry is also encouraging, industries to set up skill development training programs, for which there is a lot of support. Having said that, I think all these aspects in the tourism are very, very good. But if you focus on inbound tourism, which has a multiplier effect, as far as domestic tourism connectivity and everything is excellent. The Udan scheme is doing very well. All those connectivities are very good. Railways are improving, and inland waterways have started. Coastal tourism is also on an increase. I represent about 4 cruise companies in India, and a lot of international cruise companies are looking at India. I also represent a river cruise company of Europe, and they are also looking at India. But having said that, you see, for inbound tourism, the fares are still very expensive. And what Mr. Zutsi said, that gradually they will come down. No, it is all demand and supply. You see, if you increase the supply, fares will automatically come down. Right now, the airlines coming into India is limited. Air seats are limited. They are not able to bring in at the right price. You see, foreign tourists. So whatever we may spend on marketing and promotion, if the seats are not there to bring them, then it is an effort that will go, in vain. So my suggestion, particularly in civil aviation, is we have an open sky policy with the US and with a few ASEAN countries. But with the rest of the world, for example, there are no airlines coming in from South America. With Africa, we don't have an open sky. With a lot of other countries, you see there's a lot of restriction. Our bilaterals are based on the principle of reciprocity. If their airline comes, we allow. So we need to have a very open approach, because India is more important than any of the Indian carriers. And we need to get international tourists, and the airfares need to come down.
Absolutely. That's very important, Mr. Goel, what you've said, because going forth with the kind of ambitions, with the kind of objectives that this new policy sets, we have to perhaps have a flexible approach, and all of these stumbling roadblocks that you've mentioned have to be taken care of. Only then we will be able to realize the full potential and achieve the ambition that this policy speaks about. So time is running out. I'll have to wind up the program. Thank you once again, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of Perspective today, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. Absolute pleasure to have all three of you on the program today. So that's it from us, viewers, on this edition of Perspective today. I'll see you same time tomorrow now. Until then, you take good care of yourselves and keep watching Sansad TV.